Rob said he doesn't like cantaloupe.
I'll take his.
But when we see our people working hard, people that really got pride, people that really work the sweat out there, putting the food on the table for you, for me, for everybody in this country, and all of a sudden we have to see these people in the food lines. And it's pretty embarrassing to see that some of those people, when they're going to receive those food cans, so that food is coming from China, that's like a slap in the face. For our government, we always got all the respect. Our communities, we concentrate and work and produce. Unfortunately, in the last 3 years, we've been really studying why we get blamed for something that we don't do. We're not infecting the delta. We're not killing the fish, and the pumps getting shut off because they're blaming the pumps, and they say that that's what is killing the delta's melt. I think the reality is a lot bigger than that. When we went in field and we went to see those channels in the places where the water's hardly moving, you see that water bubbling in there. It's how infected it is. When you see Sacramento, Stockton, Tracy, and all those cities dumping their sewage into the delta, that's what is killing the fish. It's what our representatives should be looking at and seeing that this is not the farm workers. I mean, we don't do anything but work. This is so simple. Our government should be looking out for us. And it's so simple, it's not going to cost a penny for them to turn the pumps on and work in the real issue, in the reality. They need to see that the real problem, is what they're dumping into the delta, not the farm workers or not the farmers. All we do is work. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to go to Chris Acree with Revive the San Joaquin to testify.
Hi, thank you for the invitation. It's rare to have a local environmental group represented in these witness panels, and I appreciate the opportunity. Revive's a local group, a local community-based nonprofit working for restoration of the San Joaquin River and stewardship of its resources. The benefits of San Joaquin River restoration in our area have not yet been realized, and I believe this is important because while the program participants are primarily focused on quantifying the losses to the Frank contractors, there are huge benefits from restoration locally that go unrecognized. Defining our needs as a valley and being able to quantify the benefits of new programs and infrastructure is the first step to creating a more sustainable economy here and to identifying what actions need to be undertaken to fix these problems. The Delta is, as we've talked about, is central to our problem here in the valley, and I request that the federal legislature not rush to pass bills that weaken the Endangered Species Act or enable more south of Delta transfers without ensuring that these measures are compatible with Delta sustainability planning efforts going on at the state. The water legislation recently passed by the Senate Water Committee is unnecessary. It creates a dangerous layer and confusing layer of government that is counterproductive to the Delta efforts going on at the state. We know we have taken too much water from the South Delta, and legislation used as a Hail Mary pass for the last drop of that fresh water in the Delta, especially in drought years, is very damaging. It's well established that pumping levels through the South Delta have increased this last decade to unsustainable levels, and that our only solution left here is either to reduce exports or deliver more fresh water to the Delta. When we talk about the need for new water supplies to be developed with new bonds and legislation, this fact often gets lost and leaves new developable supplies up for grabs to the highest bidder, and it may provide no benefits in this region that we need to focus on, which is the South Delta. Restoration of the San Joaquin River gets a real bad rap in the San Joaquin Valley as we talk about losses of 15% to Frank contractors. But the reality of that is that those losses are less in drought years, these years that we need to focus more on, and that this doesn't look into all the options of recirculation that are inherent in the restoration program. When we talk about restoration flows being released from the dam, it's actually creating more storage in the dam, and there's benefits locally to groundwater supplies, which our cities need. There's benefits to local water districts downstream of Friant, and there's also benefits as this water is delivered directly to the South Delta, where we need it most to turn those pumps back on. As water runs downriver, it can release the burden on these other water districts, which can create new water. It creates storage behind Friant Dam, which can create new water, but we haven't yet grasped these new water supplies that are being created. So when we look at options with these new bonds. We look at infrastructure proposals like Temperance Flat Dam. We're learning more and more that these new water supplies created by these dams are not sustainable. They're getting smaller as we look at calculating restoration supplies into those estimates. We haven't looked at the local impacts of mining the material that would take to build that dam. That could reduce our efforts for restoration. And we haven't looked at the offsets of the clean hydropower that would be lost from those storage options. So what I'd like to just start by saying here is that we need to develop local infrastructure here that has local benefits and that's consistent with South Delta water quality protection, because without protecting the water quality in the South Delta, we really don't have any hope for keeping those pumps on in the west side. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to recognize Mr. Ron Jacobsma of the Friant Water Users Authority to testify. Ron, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Congressman, and you got my name right out of the gate. That's pretty amazing. I'm here representing the east side of the San Joaquin Valley. For a long time, we've been somewhat unaffected by what's been happening in the Delta, but as noted by Mr. Nunes, this has been a challenge that's been developing over the last couple of decades. And now the crisis that is affecting Ground Zero, as Mr. Birmingham stated, is migrating over to the east side. And a lot of folks wonder how that is. Well, we have 884,000 acre-feet of historical water rights holders that need to be delivered from Northern California to the San Joaquin Valley in order for us to get our water supplies out of Millerton Lake. And last year was the first year in 50 years plus years of the project that those supplies were in jeopardy. And if those supplies don't get delivered, it comes out of our supplies. This year, we're faced with similar circumstances, so we're very upset that the pumps are not running at a higher capacity right now, because not only is it not delivering west side water supplies, it's not delivering the core oil supplies to the exchange contractors. Additionally, there's 128,000 acre-feet of water to deliver to Cross Valley contractors, predominantly in the south part of the valley in Mr. McCarthy's district, and that's also a very important part of our water supplies. Finally, there's been much said about settlement, and I can tell you it's not the ideal place we would rather be. We were quite comfortable in operating the way we had for the last half a century, but part of that was to be able to get, part of that settlement was to be able to get our water supply back, recirculation, using the Delta pumps to get our water supply back. Now with the two new biological opinions, that ability to recirculate water is highly questionable and maybe non-existent. All of this because of a great experiment that's being undertaken that seems to be based on questionable science, unknown fish benefits, but known economic and human impacts. We need to turn those pumps on until we can figure out what's really happening in the Delta or the ocean or other conditions. One way to do that is we need to take a look at predation in the Delta. We have non-native fishery species that have been introduced. We've got videos showing when we release smolts off the San Joaquin River system, they don't get chewed up by the pumps. They get taken out by the bass on their way to the pumps or away to the ocean. So the pumping is not really a problem in our estimation, or not the significant problem. We need to continue to move forward on the Bay Delta Conservation Plan. There are things we can do to enhance the environment in the Delta that don't have these draconian water supply impacts. And then finally, we can talk about this more, there are surface and groundwater solutions that are available to work. But in the case of Temperance Flat, a local project that can provide tremendous groundwater benefits by being able to manage high water years, it is an expensive project. There are some challenges with it, but if we had a Delta fix, we could move wet year water through the Delta, through exchange, back it up into Temperance Flat, and I believe make that a very viable project. So I think there are solutions out there, and we appreciate your continuing to heighten the problems that we're having. It's not just the west side, it's not just the east side, it's not just the south side, it's all of the San Joaquin Valley that is going to be negatively affected, both economically and with the human toll. Not only are we going to lose tax revenues, economic benefits, but the assistance needed to support those folks who are being impacted puts a further drain on governmental resources. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today.
Ron, thank you for taking the time to address us. And next is Mr. Cole Upton with the Chowchilla Water District.
Yeah. Thank you, Congressman. I'm a farmer on the east side of the San Joaquin Valley, and I think what's happening to the west side is despicable and criminal. Problem we see here on the east side is the same thing's about to happen to us here. And why it's going to happen is because of the San Joaquin River settlement. This was gone into in good faith by the farmers, by the Fryant water users. I was one of the negotiators. And the deal was we're going to try to restore the salmon to the San Joaquin, and we were supposed to get our water back. Well, guess what? The enviros reneged on their agreement, and they did this with the Delta lawsuits. They got a twofer out of it. They're drying up the west side in one case, and then they're vitiating our ability to get our water back on the other. And what this is going to mean is the same thing it means on the west side. We're going to have to idle land. 300,000 acres is going to have to be idle with the loss of jobs and the effects on the communities and all that. The thing that makes it astounding to me is that this is the hottest salmon fishery in history here.